The stagecoach. Maybe you've seen it because of the iconic John Wayne movie, or you've read about it in a book, or maybe you've seen it at your local bank. Before the development of the railroad with its steam-powered locomotive pulling train cars carrying passengers and cargo, the stagecoach was the key way to travel in the past. This is why we have dubbed it the bus of the old days. The stagecoach, also known as stage for short, was a large, usually enclosed, four-wheeled carriage that was pulled by 4 to 6 horses or mules. Stagecoaches had doors in the sides and an elevated seat in front for the driver called the box. Depending on the size, the stagecoach could carry 7 to 12 passengers, with some passengers able to sit inside, while others, if the stagecoach was too full, would sit on the top. Cargo was either carried on the top of the stagecoach, in the front boot that was under the driver's feet, hence the term boot, or in the rear boot, which was an area that was situated at the back of the stagecoach. The stagecoach was constructed with large back wheels to make the stage easier for the horses or mules to pull, while the front wheels were always smaller than the back wheels to make it easier to turn. In the United States, a simplified and lighter vehicle known as a stage wagon, mud coach or mud wagon was used under difficult conditions where standard stagecoaches would be too big and too heavy, and wherever the poor state of the roads and/or demand for services did not warrant the expense of a stagecoach. The difference between these vehicles and stagecoaches was that they were canvas-topped, had a lower center of gravity, and could not be loaded on the roof with heavy freight or passengers like an enclosed coach could. The stagecoach was driven by one driver, who sat at the front of the coach, high enough to have a clear view of the path and surrounding landscape. Beside the driver would sit another man, who was the stagecoach guard. He was armed with a shotgun or coach gun in the case of any robbers or thugs that they might encounter along the way. This is where we get the expression riding shotgun and where yelling shotgun to indicate that a person is getting the seat beside the driver comes from. On average, stagecoaches traveled about 5 miles per hour, with the daily mileage covered being up to 70 miles. This was until the 18th century when roads were improved and springs were added to the stagecoach, increasing the speed of travel to about 10 miles per hour. The stagecoach got its name because it could only travel at most 15 miles before it had to stop at a stage stop, also known as a stage station, staging post, or a coaching inn, which provided overnight accommodations. During these stops, the tired and worn horses were replaced with fresh horses, and passengers were given the opportunity to get a bite to eat, drink, and rest before continuing on their journey to the next stage stop. Stagecoaches were not just for passengers. They often carried legal documents, large bank deposits, company payrolls, as well as the mail. In France, a large stagecoach called a diligence, named this for its reputation for promptitude and good timekeeping, was used for long journeys. Diligences had 2 to 3 compartments which could hold up to 17 people, and they were pulled by 5 to 7 horses. Unlike other stagecoaches, the diligence was driven by postilions who rode the rear horses that pulled the coach while steering the front horses. The diligence was also used in England and was popular in both countries in the 18th and 19th centuries. The animals used to pull the stagecoach were called a team. The size of the team would depend on terrain, length of route, and/or expected weather. When the route was particularly rough, mules were preferred over horses. This is because mules are much more sure-footed, can handle heavy loads better, and have more stamina. Teams were referred to by the number of animals used. 2 up meant 2 horses or mules pulling the stagecoach. 4 up meant 4 horses or mules pulling the stage. 6 up meant a 6-horse team or mule team was pulling the stage. Teams pulling a stagecoach had their roles. Each horse or mule was specially trained and suited to their position in the team. The 2 in the front are called leaders because they led the team. They were the smallest pair of animals. They were the most athletic, the smartest, and the most alert part of the team. The two closest to the coach are called the wheelers. They were the biggest and strongest and would provide stability by pulling most of the weight of the stage. The strength of the wheelers is often the factor in determining the maximum safe load for a vehicle. While all the animals can pull uphill, only the wheelers can hold the vehicle downhill. It is for this reason the strongest pair in a team may be chosen as the wheelers. They provided the main braking effort, slowing the vehicle and controlling it downhill by pulling back on the pole or shafts. They also primarily helped steer or maneuver the stagecoach by turning the pole or shafts. In a six-up, the middle pair were called the swing team, and they were the next biggest pair. In steering, this pair would start the pivoting moves when the stagecoach goes around a corner. In driving, the most important way to communicate with the horses was with the 2 or 3 pairs of reins the driver held in his hands, depending on a 4 or 6 horse team. Sensitive to the driver's lead, the horses responded to the slightest movement of the reins and depended on the driver for continual guidance. Verbal commands would be used, as well as soothing, soft-spoken words to encourage the horses along dangerous mountain trails. Horses were changed out at each stagecoach stop, which were a minimum of 10, but not more than 15 miles apart from the last stop. This meant a horse would pull the stagecoach for about a 2 to 3 hour shift. Stagecoach horses were usually treated with respect by their drivers and received excellent care and attention. This care ensured the longevity of the horses in work. It has been noted that one horse working in California remained in service for 15 years, and it is estimated that he logged 250,000 miles. Stagecoach drivers were the road warriors of their day, and they were revered. The profession of stagecoach driver required excellent horsemanship, driving skills, and often demanded tremendous courage, traveling through hostile Indian country with the possibility of being threatened by robbers. It is said that boys who were interested in becoming drivers started learning the art of reinsmanship as young as 7 or 8. They'd use a pretend wooden rig and learned in progressive phases until the ages of 17 to 19. The average age for most drivers was under the age of 40. Due to the nature of their business, most drivers lived roving, unsettled lives, moving from one stage line to another or going from place to place on the same line. On some routes, the driver would have his own area, driven over and over, usually covering about 50 miles. A stagecoach driver could make a good salary, sometimes as much as $125 a month, plus room and board. Stagecoach drivers were often called nicknames, such as Whip, Brother Whip, Charlie, Reinsman, Coachman in the UK, and Jehu from the biblical king Jehu, who was known for driving his chariot fast and furiously. 2 Kings 9:20 in the Bible says, "And the driving is like the driving of Jehu the son of Nimshi, for he driveth furiously." However, when talking directly to driver, a person would just refer to him by his actual name. The nickname Whip was given because many stagecoach drivers considered their whips as badges of honor. It is said that they never accepted tips but would accept the whip, as it was the symbol of their profession. They took pride in them, with some drivers having whips that were handcrafted with silver layered over handles made of hickory. The whips had buckskin lashes, usually 11 to 12 feet long. The way stagecoach drivers are depicted in the movies is uncharacteristic of how they truly were, as drivers seldom cracked the whip, and they also never allowed the lash of a whip to touch their animals. This was because they were concerned that the sharp sounds could not only startle their passengers, but even worse, it would spook their horses. Stagecoach drivers loved and understood horses, and they were careful not to overwork and exhaust their teams with unnecessary speed. While some might believe that the stagecoach originated in the United States, this is actually not the case. The stagecoach design was an evolution from horse-drawn vehicles that have existed in different countries throughout history, such as chariots, wagons, and carriages. The word coach is often used interchangeably with carriage. However, a coach is generally a public carriage. The coach is believed to have originated in Hungary in the 15th century in the town of Cox, from where the name coach comes from. The coach as we know it was one of the first forms of organized public transportation and appeared in Great Britain in the 1600s. Privileged, financially well-off passengers would be inside the stagecoach. Second-class seats were available in a large open basket attached to the back. The least privileged travelers sat on the roof with the luggage, relying on a handrail to prevent themselves from slipping off. While the stagecoach's history began in Great Britain, it reached America and became the center of quick travel across the states. The stage first made its way to the New World and the American colonies in 1718 and was owned by Jonathan Wardwell of Boston. This coach made its debut on May 13th and traveled from Boston, Massachusetts to Providence, Rhode Island. The first coaches were of poor design and didn't offer much more comfortable travel than that of a regular wagon. The coach was heavy and cumbersome, often without any form of spring to absorb the shock of the rough ride. Also, the poor design resulted in near-impossible travel in wet or muddy conditions. Coaches were drawn by 4 horses in good weather and 6 in bad. And when there were hills, the passengers almost always had to leave the coach at the bottom of a hill and climb on foot until it was suitable to be able to join it again. Many stage routes traveled over rugged roads, causing wheels to sink into deep sand or thick mud. Other routes wound through mountains with the trails hugging the sides of steep and narrow cliffs. The most common accident that a stagecoach was involved in would be overturning. This might occur because of the horses shying, bolting, or making a sudden turn. Or it might occur because a wheel broke, going into a ditch, over a boulder or lump of compacted snow. The result would be that the coach would fall onto its side. Outside passengers would be thrown to the ground. Many were injured or killed. The horses would often run off in a panic after the accident, dragging the wreckage of the coach some distance, adding to the injuries. Travel between towns by coach was a slow business. For instance, in Scotland, the journey between Edinburgh and Glasgow, which is about 46 miles, took around 11 or 12 hours, progressing at the rate of 3 3/4 miles per hour unless anything unexpected happened. Travel improved when roads were improved and new coach construction methods were introduced. In 1754, a special kind of stagecoach service was invented in Manchester, England, called the flying coach, the name flying implying speed. This coach was said to travel, in the case of no accidents, 4.5 days from Manchester to London, which was a distance of 182 miles. With constant improvements, 3 years later another service was created similar to the Manchester Flying Coach, which was the Liverpool Flying Machine. These stagecoaches were made with steel spring suspension, revolutionizing this system of travel, and the slightly longer distance could be traveled in just 3 days. The new faster coaches used teams of horses stationed along the route and changed at regular intervals. In addition to the flying coaches, fly wagons carrying goods by road and fly boats on the canals were faster than ordinary wagons or boats because they too relied on regular changes of horse. In those days, coach horses lived hard lives. Considering a stagecoach might weigh up to 2 tons with as many as 15 passengers plus luggage on board, coach horses didn't last long, usually being sold every 2 to 3 years for lighter work. Coach travel was also not without worries. Danger from highwaymen, which were robbers who stole from travelers, was an ever-present threat during these stagecoach travels. The demand to stand and deliver, sometimes in forms such as stand and deliver your purse, stand and deliver your money, was in use from the 17th century to the 19th century. The phrase, your money or your life, is mentioned in trial reports from the mid-18th century. But alas, the stagecoach's reign didn't last forever. With the invention of trains and the railroads, stagecoach lines started becoming less and less utilized across the country. However, although trains were being increasingly used for transporting both passengers and cargo, they were still confined to their tracks. Those who lived in rural areas continued to rely on stagecoaches for local travel, and hotels sent them to meet trains or take guests sightseeing. It wasn't until the early 1900s when the automobile was introduced that actually led to the end of the stagecoach. Although the need for the stagecoach as a means of public transportation cross-country ended, the tourist aspect is still alive. Even today, people from all over can journey to America's western states to get the experience of what it was like to ride in a stagecoach. And with that, we come to the conclusion of our journey into history to learn more about the buses of the old days. Thank you for watching this Explore Horses production. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel to learn more about the fantastic world of horses. Until then, farewell.